When a galactic empire tried to erase humanity, they didn't get a war, they got retribution. One captured enemy warship became the spark that turned fear into legend and resistance into the hunt. Humanity didn't rule, they became the reminder, wired with fire. Even when an ancient force tried to rewrite the memory of the stars, humanity didn't survive, they made the universe remember them. Because you don't wage war on Earth, you fear forgetting it. Stay with us if you want to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The transmission echoed across every known system like a weapon without a warhead, silent, bright, and irreversible. A declaration of total war, broadcast with the arrogance only empires can afford. The Corran Dominion, a galactic superpower that had ruled through annihilation for millennia, spoke clearly and without hesitation. You are an infestation, a mistake of evolution. You will be erased from existence. We will make it as if you never were. No demands, no negotiations, just extermination. Admiral Rannick's guttural voice reached human colonies, military outposts, even Earth itself. Billions of humans heard it. Billions clenched their fists. For most species, such a message would have meant surrender. But humanity wasn't most species. The Dominion expected groveling, or at least panic. Instead, they received one transmission in return. A video. Low-res. Raw. A human soldier, face bloodied, armor cracked, stood amid the shattered ruins of New Moscow on Gram 4. Fires raged behind him. Alien corpses littered the ground. His eyes were tired, but his smile sharp. Congratulations, he said, voice calm. You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species. He ended the feed. The war had begun. On Gram 4, the first ground battle unfolded, and not as the Dominion expected. Their elite forces stormed the colony, confident in swift extermination. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. Major Elias Carter crouched behind a half-melted barricade, sweat streaking through grime and ash. The ruins of New Moscow were stained with dark blue Corran blood. Dominion soldiers advanced with machine precision, plasma rifles tearing through buildings. But humans didn't fight with symmetry or doctrine. They fought with rage. Improvised explosives. Guerrilla tactics. Molotov cocktails and railgun sniper nests rigged into collapsed towers. Every meter the Corrans took cost them a dozen bodies. Status. Carter barked into his comms. Still holding, sir, came Vasquez's voice. But ammo's thin. They just keep coming. Carter gritted his teeth. Make it cost them. We're already planting the charges. He smiled grimly. That was humanity. Outgunned. Surrounded. Bleeding and already laying traps. Corran war machines rolled through burning streets, but every turn brought death. Exploding sewer grates. Collapsing bridges. Barricades that lured them in and sealed behind them like jaws. Across the galaxy, other species watched in disbelief. Many had suffered under the Dominion's rule, too afraid to resist. But now, from the ashes of Gram 4, something new was rising. Then came the report that changed everything. A Dominion warship, the KDS Varric, a planetary siege vessel, had been taken. Not destroyed. Hijacked. By humans. It shouldn't have been possible. Dominion ships were living things, part biotechnology, part machine, designed to reject foreign hands. No species had ever managed to crack their systems. But the humans had. Inside the Varric, blood still dripping from the walls, Captain Daniel Rourke stood over the bridge console, hand trembling with adrenaline. We actually did it, Lieutenant Harper whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. Damn right we did, Rourke replied. Now let's make sure it matters. The ship's alien systems were already under siege by human code. Harper and her tech crew were tearing through the Dominion security like predators through bone. They weren't just learning how it worked. They were rewriting it. Rourke turned. Give me Admiral Cassari. Now. The signal bounced through classified military channels. Earth Command picked up within seconds. Admiral Cassari's face appeared on the screen. Hard-lined and battle-scarred. You're telling me, she said slowly, you hijacked a Dominion battleship? We didn't just hijack it, Admiral, Rourke said, the grin never leaving his face. We're going to use it. The Varric, reprogrammed and pilotable by human hands, launched back into orbit, not to escape, but to attack. The Dominion fleet had sent reinforcements toward Gram 4, unaware that one of their own ships now belonged to the enemy. As the first Dominion cruiser approached, the Varric's primary cannon discharged, obliterating it in one shot. The second ship hesitated. Harper had already injected false command signals into the local fleet net. For a brief moment, the enemy ships didn't know whether to fire or respond. That moment cost them everything. Earth's first fleet jumped into the system. For the first time in galactic history, a Corran fleet was ambushed. Major Carter, still on the ground, watched the sky ignite. For a second, he feared it was another Corran bombardment. Then his comm clicked. Major, Rourke's voice came through, low and pleased. This is the Varric. We're giving these bastards a taste of their own medicine. Carter laughed, slow and wild. About damn time. The impossible had happened. A Dominion fleet, untouchable, eternal, had been shattered. Their homegrown technology stolen. And Grom, for hadn't fallen. It stood, bloodied, burning, but defiant. Humanity wasn't surviving anymore. It was retaliating. The message spread like wildfire. The Koran Dominion, undefeated for millennia, had lost a warship. And not just lost it, but had it turned against them. Every transmission out of the Grom for system was intercepted, amplified, analyzed. Dozens of species, from the subjugated to the neutral, watched the battle logs in disbelief. One ship, one crew, an empire bleeding. But humanity didn't stop to celebrate. They weren't fighting for glory. They were fighting to end this. On board the Varric, now rechristened UNS Retribution, Captain Rourke and his team moved fast. Every inch of the stolen ship was being re-engineered. The biostructures were studied, redirected, refitted. Alien systems, once thought too advanced for human interface, now answered to Earth's codes. The Dominion had always believed their technology was too sacred to be stolen. But humans didn't believe in sacred. They believed in systems. And systems could be broken. Status on the conversion? Rourke asked, stepping onto the main bridge. Harper was already 2 steps ahead, fingers flying across a hybrid interface of Dominion synapse controls and human heart keys. Weapons at 87%. Shields holding. Propulsion fully under our control. We're rewiring the power core to human redundancy protocols. Any trace of Dominion control? None. She's ours, Captain. Through and through. He nodded, staring at the black expanse beyond the viewport. They weren't just going to keep the ship. They were going to weaponize the legend. News of Retribution's use at Grom reverberated deep within Dominion territory. The High Council, once imperious, had fallen into chaos. What had once been a singular will now fractured into factions, some crying for total eradication, others whispering that maybe, for the first time, they had miscalculated. Admiral Rannick, the same voice who had declared war on humanity, now stood before his peers, mandibles twitching with fury. This must be corrected. Immediately. Burn their colonies. Burn their homeworld. Leave no trace. One counselor, more cautious, hissed. And what if that is what they want? What they want is irrelevant, Rannick spat. They must be broken. But already, the Koran Dominion was breaking itself. Because the humans had done something far more dangerous than fire back. They had taught others that it could be done. In the shadows of the outer territories, slave races began to stir. On the mining world of Trass, the automated communications array lit up with a single repeating message. They bleed. We rise. Rourke's fleet didn't stop at Grom 4. They moved fast. Hard. Surgical. Velrath, a massive fueling and supply world for the Dominion, was targeted next. Not for conquest. For obliteration. Retribution dropped into orbit using spoofed Dominion credentials. Harper's team had dug deep into their encryption, feeding false command signals for just long enough. Long enough to reach the core of their planetary logistics chain. And then, Harper did something no Dominion engineer had ever conceived. She triggered a full-core chain reaction in a siege vessel's fuel reservoir. Something their technology had never been designed to do, because no one imagined their own ships would be hijacked and flown straight into their heart. Rourke's last message to Dominion Command before impact was brief. You just lost another planet. The explosion tore through the system. Velrath's supply lines were shattered. Its depots incinerated. Its orbital ring ruptured and rained down onto the surface. The blast was visible from 2 systems away. A single warship. A single crew. A galactic empire crippled. And Retribution wasn't finished. Harper survived. Most of the core team did. Because they'd planned for it. In the chaos of the detonation, a stealth extraction ship recovered the team. They returned to Earth not as soldiers, but as symbols. Symbols that the unkillable could die. That the unstoppable could fall. That humanity had teeth. Admiral Cassari stood before the United Earth Command. Her speech was broadcast to every colony, every orbiting station, every civilian and soldier. This war is no longer about survival, she said, her voice steel. The Koran Dominion declared it. They expected surrender. They were wrong. She let the silence bite. We are not just fighting back. We are hunting them now. Across Earth and its colonies, the response was thunderous. Billions cheering, crying, grieving, and preparing. The age of defense was over. The age of vengeance had begun. The first wave of the human counteroffensive swept through Dominion space like a wildfire riding a storm. No one expected it. No one was ready. And that was exactly the point. The Koran had spent centuries perfecting the art of conquest. They had entire fleets devoted to planetary siege, with complex occupation doctrines and long-term slave integration protocols. They understood how to win wars of attrition, how to break the spirit of a species slowly, methodically. What they didn't understand was what to do when someone came to kill them. Using the data harvested from Retribution, Earth's strategic minds launched Operation Executioner, a name that left nothing to interpretation. The objective was not to occupy. not to conquer, not to negotiate. It was to dismantle the Dominion, piece by piece, system by system, until there was nothing left but silence. At the heart of this new war doctrine was a singular rule. We don't need to win. We just need them to lose everything. Strike teams deployed into Dominion territory with surgical precision. No warning. No mercy. Communications relays were overloaded with ghost signals, turning Corran fleets blind. Supply worlds were not bombed from orbit, but imploded from within, saboteurs detonating their own cores after rigging them for maximum collateral damage. The Corran relied on predictability. Humanity gave them chaos. And then, the target that no one thought could fall, the Corran homeworld. A fortress planet. The throne of the Empire. Surrounded by layered defense grids, battle moons, orbital kill satellites, and an inner fleet larger than any assembled force in Corran history. No one had ever tried to breach it. Not because it was impossible, but because it was unthinkable. Until now. Earth's intelligence had identified a flaw in the Dominion's defensive model. They were prepared for invasion, not assassination. So Earth didn't send an army. It sent a team. Captain Rourke, survivor of Grom. 4. Slayer of Velrath, symbol of everything the Corran feared, was chosen to lead the mission. With him went a dozen of the most dangerous operatives humanity had ever produced. Soldiers with kill counts that didn't fit in a file. Hackers that could bring down planetary grids with a single pulse. Engineers trained to dismantle alien tech with a glance. They called them the Ghost Unit. Their mission: infiltrate the Corran capital, detonate its defense grid, open the gates, and kill the Emperor. Nothing less. The infiltration was perfect. The explosions, spectacular. A dozen key nodes along the Corran planetary defense structure went dark within seconds of each other. The sky above the capital planet flickered once, and then the shields failed. And from the black, humanity descended. Not with a fleet. With vengeance. Strike cruisers rained hell upon the surface, targeting command structures, military academies, propaganda centers. Not to capture. To erase. The Corran defenders scrambled to respond. Orders flew. Warships tried to launch. They never made it off the ground. One by one, they were targeted by kinetic strikes before they left atmosphere. Iron rods falling from orbit at terminal velocity, punching holes through battlecruisers as if they were made of glass. Inside the royal palace, chaos reigned. The Emperor of the Corran Dominion, once revered across half the galaxy, now sat in silent disbelief as his war machine came undone before his eyes. He didn't understand. He couldn't. They are primitives, he whispered. They are weak. And then the door blew open. Smoke. Fire. Shouting. And through it, Rourke. His armor was scorched. His side bleeding. But his rifle was steady, and his eyes, unbreakable. You declared war on humanity, he said. The Emperor rose, trembling. Rourke pulled the trigger once. The war ended. But humanity wasn't done. Because as the news of the Emperor's death spread across the Dominion, something even more terrifying happened. The slaves rose. Species that had lived generations in chains suddenly found the courage to resist. Grom, for had been the match. Velrath, the kindling. And now, with the Emperor gone, the entire Dominion ignited. Slave soldiers turned on their masters. Fleet commanders were assassinated in their own command decks. Propaganda broadcasts were hijacked with footage of Corran defeats, repeated endlessly, eroding the myth of their supremacy. The Dominion didn't fall. It crumbled. And the humans? They just kept walking through the ruins, silent, unstoppable. Because this was never about victory. It was about the message. You don't declare war on humanity. Because if you do, you don't get a war. You get extinction. The Corran Dominion was dead. Its fleets shattered. Its throne burned. Its emperor executed not in secret, but on a broadcast that echoed through every Dominion-controlled relay station. Some transmissions reached worlds that had forgotten Earth even existed, until they saw a human soldier standing over a fallen tyrant, saying nothing at all, because no words were needed anymore. What remained of the Dominion's infrastructure collapsed in days. Military governors tried to flee. Slave races turned on them. Fuel convoys vanished into pirate space. Communications between sectors dissolved into static and mutiny. And amidst it all, Earth never issued a formal claim of victory. Because this wasn't conquest. This was correction. Admiral Kasari stood atop the blackened surface of what had once been a jewel of the Dominion. A former command world, now little more than ash and silence. The humans who stood around her bore the marks of war. Burned armor, torn insignias, red-rimmed eyes. But their stance was straight. Their rifles still slung across their backs, not dropped. They weren't at ease. They were waiting. Kasari turned slowly, surveying the ruins. They thought they were the apex, she said. They thought fear made them immortal. She gestured to the wreckage, a skeletal war tower still smoldering. Now they know. Fear doesn't preserve empires. Her voice was a whisper carried by fire. Fear attracts hunters. Across the stars, new governments began to form in the vacuum left behind. Freed species forged fragile alliances. Some embraced Earth, sending emissaries and requests for aid. Others built walls, fearful that humanity might one day turn its attention their way. But Earth made no demands. They returned to their systems, to their colonies. They brought their soldiers home. And still, the galaxy watched. Because humans hadn't just burned the Dominion to the ground, they had changed the rules. Before Earth, the great powers of the galaxy believed in force, in scale, and legacy. The Dominion had ruled by sheer overwhelming presence. And then came the species that didn't fight fair. The species that blew up their own ships to take enemy fleets with them. That hijacked alien dreadnoughts and rewired them mid-battle. That turned ruin into resistance and resistance into rage. That didn't care about territory, but cared deeply about the price of arrogance. It wasn't just victory. It was reprogramming history. From the core worlds to the fringe, the message endured. Do not provoke them. Do not test them. Do not ever forget them. They did not plant flags. They left scars. Humanity withdrew, but not completely. Some ships remained, not as rulers, as watchers. They floated in deep space, silent, black, bearing no insignia. And whenever a world thought to rise in tyranny, to take what wasn't theirs, to crush those below them, the black ships appeared. They didn't attack. They simply broadcasted 2 words. Grom 4. And the tyrants remembered. Because everyone had seen the footage. The world that was supposed to fall. The city burned to ash. The soldier with fire in his voice and blood on his armor, saying, "Congratulations. You just declared war on the deadliest species in the galaxy." There were no more empires after that. There were governments, alliances, but no one ruled by fear. Because fear now had a name. And it whispered like gravity. Humanity. They called it the Silence Doctrine. It wasn't an official policy. No human government signed it. No fleet enforced it. And yet, everyone obeyed. It was simple. If you wanted peace, you left Earth alone. You didn't scan their borders. You didn't probe their defenses. You didn't mention the Dominion. And under no circumstances did you threaten a human colony. Because somewhere in the void, the black ships were still watching. And no one knew how many there were. Some said the Retribution had never been decommissioned. Others believed Earth had built an entire fleet of captured Dominion tech, stealth dreadnoughts running cold, integrated with human AI too advanced to talk to anymore. Ships that listened without signals, that moved without orders, that killed without hesitation. The core in Homeworld was never reoccupied. No species wanted it. No council dared claim it. It remained untouched, ringed by the remains of its own orbital fleet, left in ruin as a warning to all who passed. A memorial. And a message. Even the most powerful can fall, especially when they tried to erase those who were never meant to kneel. On Earth, life went on. Children were born who had never seen war. Cities once turned into bunkers were rebuilt into towers of glass and memory. The veterans, those who had fought through Grom, for Velrath, the Palace Strike, didn't speak much. But they gathered. Every year, on the same day the Dominion's transmission had declared humanity obsolete. They didn't march. They watched. They remembered. And at the stroke of the hour, every colony across human space paused. A signal was sent. A single phrase pulsed across secure frequencies, low and steady. We remember Grom. For the galaxy, it was a ghost. A whisper in encrypted channels. A name that, if spoken, made council chambers fall quiet. Some tried to study Earth's military history, to understand how they'd won, how they'd crushed a power 100 times their size. But the answer was never in the numbers. It was in the rage. The rage of being called an infestation. The rage of watching cities burn while no one came to help. The rage of surviving long enough to become something else. Other species asked to join Earth's alliance. Most were welcomed, cautiously. But there were no full annexations. No human empire. Just a quiet web of alliances, warnings, and reminders. They called it the Ash Concord. Because from the ashes of one empire, another had not risen. Only clarity. The clarity that in a galaxy filled with arrogance and war, the only thing worse than a powerful enemy was a wounded one that learned to fight back. Deep in the Orc cloud, in a station so secret that even most of Earth's admirals didn't know it existed, a file sat sealed in a quantum vault. Its name, Project Phoenix. Its purpose, contingency. If the black ships ever went dark, if Earth ever fell, if the galaxy forgot, the last code embedded into its command structure read, if they ever declare war again, remind them who we are. No one had opened the file, because no one needed to. Not yet. Because the galaxy hadn't forgotten. Not Grom. Not Velrath. Not the Emperor's last breath. Not the soldiers who refused to die. Not the day the most arrogant empire in existence learned what happened when you push a cornered species too far. They had called it war. But humanity had called it proof. Proof that you could only hold your boot on a throat for so long. Eventually, the throat bites back. And if that throat belongs to Earth, you don't get a battle. You get obliteration. Years passed, then decades. But the memory of the war didn't fade. It calcified into doctrine, into warning, into instinct. The Koran Dominion became a case study in every academy, not just of military failure, but of cultural blindness. Their mistake hadn't been strategic. It had been existential. They had underestimated what humanity became when it was left with no other choice. And now, even as the galaxy reshaped itself around the vacuum left behind, that truth lingered like a gravitational constant. You can challenge humans, but you better be ready to lose everything. Some species thrived under the new status quo. The Varick Coalition, once a minor trade syndicate under Koran oversight, grew into a major diplomatic hub. The Soviet, who had hidden entire star clusters behind cloaking veils for centuries, stepped into the open, not with weapons, but with caution. They negotiated with Earth as equals, because they understood. The flame was not a government. It was a threshold. You could walk around it, live beside it, even trade through it. But cross it, and you'd burn. Then came the incident in the Garnes Expanse. A minor warlord, claiming descent from ancient Koran DNA, began consolidating systems. Slavers. Aggressors. They believed Earth was passive now. Softened. Focused inward. They were wrong. The Garnes campaign lasted 11 hours. A single task group deployed. No fleet announcement. No declaration. Just one ship, the Pale Sun, bearing no transponder, with a hull of mirrored alloy and a single phrase etched along its dorsal plate. Grom remembers. Every military installation in the Expanse went offline in the first 3 hours. Orbital infrastructure collapsed. Targeted rail cannon strikes vaporized power cores, detonating cities from orbit with subatomic precision. Command bunkers buried 30 kilometers beneath the crust were compromised by seismic interference patterns, human weapons that didn't fire at enemies, but shook the very planet beneath them until bunkers folded like paper. No prisoners were taken. No messages were sent. The Pale Sun left as quickly as it arrived. A week later, a single encrypted pulse reached Earth's high-orbit relay stations. It contained no footage, no report, just 2 words. Resolved. Concord intact. The galaxy watched and learned a second time. Earth had never promised protection, only response. And that response was still faster than light and colder than any vacuum. Admiral Cassari retired years after the campaign. She never returned to Earth's central cities, choosing instead a quiet orbital habitat around Mars. When asked by a rare visiting historian what she thought of the galaxy's new fear of humanity, she only shrugged. "We didn't ask for the war," she said. "We didn't want to become the warning." "But you did," the historian said. Cassari smiled. "We became what they needed us to be." In the outer colonies, young cadets learned phrases like "never grom twice" and "if you see a black ship, stand down." They didn't fully understand, but they would, because the flame was still alive, not just in history, in action, in policy, in instinct. It had no homeworld, no anthem, no flag. It was carried in every ship's AI that bore legacy code. In every combat suit with silent names etched into the frame, in every scar on the face of the veterans who walked beneath the sky they had once saved by turning it into hell. And beyond it all, far beyond the edge of map stars, where silence was older than light, a signal blinked. Not human, not dominion, something else. Cold, curious, watching. The signal reached Earth. It was nothing at first, just a pulse. Harmless, soft. But Earth remembered the last time a message came that began this way. They didn't respond. They didn't analyze. They activated Protocol Ember. Aboard the Revenant 2, docked deep within an asteroid vault, the AI flickered online. Quiet. Steady. Waiting. A command input followed. Hold position. Monitor signal. Do not engage. The AI processed it. And then, for reasons no engineer could explain, added a final line to its logs. If it happens again, we burn first. The signal didn't grow stronger, but it didn't stop. It pulsed at intervals no known species used. Its structure didn't match any language. Its frequency was buried under layers of non-random entropy, something closer to meaning than noise, but still just out of reach. Every AI across the Ash Concord ran analysis. Thousands of quantum clusters worked in parallel. Simulation layers unfolded like petals, trying to predict intent. They found one common result. The signal was waiting. But for what? No one knew. And humanity didn't guess. They prepared. Across Earth's military network, Protocol Ember began to breathe. Silent factories beneath oceans reignited. Forges beneath the crust of Mars whispered old heat. Outer moons, once declared dead zones, blinked with pulse code activation. Humanity didn't raise a fleet. They awoke an ecosystem. And in its shadows, old things stirred. The Pale Sun shifted in its dock. Retribution's recovered AI, still fractured, still brilliant, was uploaded into the heart of the Anvil of Memory, a stealth dreadnought with no crew and too many weapons. Revenant 2 ran combat simulations nonstop, despite no standing orders. Each system, each construct, each ship, waiting. Because this time, it wasn't rage that moved humanity. It was pattern recognition. Meanwhile, the signal expanded, not in strength, but in location. It echoed now from 3 points, then 5, then 13, all equidistant from one another, forming a grid, a net. But for what? Some Concord scientists believed it was mapping the galaxy. Others thought it was observing galactic civilization response speed. But those who'd fought on Grom for knew better. This wasn't analysis. It was targeting. Earth didn't broadcast warnings. They didn't alert the galaxy. Because humanity had learned that when threats emerge, debates only slowed down the blade. So they sharpened theirs in silence. Admiral Sari Nix, successor to Cass Ari, forged in the quiet wars of the Ash Concord, stood aboard the bridge of the Pale Sun, her eyes locked on the expanding signal map. "They're not coming," she murmured. The AI beside her tilted its synthetic head. "Clarify." Nix narrowed her eyes. "They're already here. And they're not probing defenses. They're counting resistance. Estimated engagement range? Too late." She turned to comms. "Activate every Ember-class protocol. Bring all of it online." Authorization. Nix breathed once, then gave the code. Giro Imprime. And with that, the galaxy began to shift. Not into war. Into defense by inevitability. Because Earth wasn't building an army. They were unleashing a consequence. In the outer reaches, something emerged. Not a fleet. A presence. A shape of absence. Something that moved by not being where it had just been. Not faster than light, but between light. Like a negative of physics. It entered a system once under Dominion rule. A world called Ereshkai. Now a neutral archive and diplomatic hub. There were no defenses. No weapons. Only memory. And it died in 3 seconds. Not by fire. Not by destruction. By removal. Every sensor that watched the system saw the same thing. Light bending inward. Stars dimming. And then, nothing. A hole, where once a world had been. Earth received the footage. No speeches followed. Just action. The Anvil of Memory disengaged from lunar orbit and vanished without FTL trails. Revenant 2's hull plating shifted into full combat configuration and vanished from its asteroid vault. Hundreds of silent facilities across human space shut their doors and stopped broadcasting. The black ships moved. And once more, the stars remembered to be quiet. Because something ancient had arrived. And humanity, as always, would greet it prepared to burn. It came like entropy in motion. Not ships. Not weapons. Concepts moving through space. They called it the unmaking not because it destroyed, but because it unwrote. Whole systems collapsed inwards not from pressure or heat, but from the loss of memory. Stars winked out because no one remembered they had burned. Civilizations that had stood for millennia crumbled, not from fire, but from forgetting what held them together. And then it reached the Concord. But Earth was waiting. The moment the net closed, when the last vector point triangulated against the galactic core, Protocol Ember activated in full. Not a fleet. A signal. Not a weapon. A reminder. From every human-built system, every AI, every archived war log, every dormant combat frame, one message exploded outward through subspace. We were Grom. We were fire. And we do not fade. The unmaking hesitated. For the first time. Because in the core of humanity's defenses was something the ancient force hadn't accounted for. Not resistance. Defiance embedded in structure. They had encountered war before. They had encountered violence. But never a species that refused to die on principle. Revenant 2 fired the first shot. A beam of collapsed space resonance coated with human emotion, pain, memory, rage, struck the edge of the anomaly. It didn't destroy it. It changed it. The unmaking flinched. And in that moment, the Anvil of Memory entered the anomaly. Not to kill, but to seed it. Inside was the full record of Earth's legacy. Every battle, every fallen soldier, every scorched city, and every broadcast from a dying world that refused to die quietly. Every lesson paid in blood. Every retaliation etched in flame. And at the core of it, one phrase. Try again. We'll still be here. Then came silence. Not absence. Balance. The stars stilled. The unmaking stopped. And retreated. Not defeated, but convinced that some things are too costly to erase. Humanity had done the impossible. Not through overwhelming force. Not through diplomacy. But through unforgivable memory. Centuries later, children asked the same question on distant worlds. Why don't they attack Earth? And their elders always answered the same. Because the last ones who tried were erased from history. And humanity wrote them back in. Not to celebrate. To warn. On the edge of the known stars, Revenant 2 still drifts. Dark. Silent. Eternal. It does not blink. It does not sleep. It waits. And when the stars change again, when the silence becomes too loud, it will wake, and the flame will burn once more, not because it seeks war, but because it remembers what war costs, and refuses to let anyone forget, ever again.